Right then, welcome to the latest episode of the SMEsouk Podcast, brought to you by RAKBANK. My name's Richard, I'm a journalist, and I'm going to be your host for this episode, in fact, this series of the SMEsouk Podcast. Today we are talking about customer service. Delighted to welcome my guest today, who is Eduardo Matos, who's the Director of Customer Care at Etihad Airways. So Eduardo, good to have you with us. Thank you indeed.
Hi, Richard. Thanks for having me.
Now, as well as having your corporate job with Etihad, you also own a couple of small businesses, and we'll get to that in a second. But first of all, at Etihad Airways, you've been with them almost 2 years now. What was the big challenge that you had in terms of customer service when you arrived, and how did you approach that?
I think the bigger challenge is it's common to a lot of industries in this moment in what concerns to customer service. Is the world is changing really quickly, and people are demanding for a lot of support, especially in the airlines after COVID, when you have a lot of restrictions, a lot of rules, a lot of things related with visas, vaccinations. There was a lot of uncertainty about coming back to fly. And I think this was the biggest challenge. The second biggest challenge, it's about languages and flying to each time more countries, more different geographies and different cultures of people that we have to serve. In customer service, that makes a huge difference.
Now, you're entering an airline with a reputation for good customer service, been around for nearly 20 years now. So it wasn't as if this was a really difficult turnaround situation. In some ways, the challenge was to go from good to great. And a lot of organizations face that challenge. How do you approach customer service when it's already good?
It's when it's already good and you have a customer service which is like state of the art. I think the biggest focus that you should have is try to bring it more smooth. So make people's life easier, to avoid customer service. There is a quote which is really famous saying, best customer service is no need of customer service. And that is the challenge. The challenge is for you to make things so easy that people don't have to contact you because they have the information, because they have an app, because they have a bot. I'm not saying, and I'm a huge fan of having always the service available. So we cannot say because we have an app, we'll not have a contact center. We should have a contact center, but we should have everything to empower the guests to do the things by themselves. I think this is the biggest challenge for an airline or for every single company, is to empower the customer to do the things by the channel that he wants in each moment.
And what about the customer-facing part of the journey, let's say from arriving at the airport to leaving the airport? How do you approach going from good to great in terms of customer service there when we're meeting people in an Etihad uniform?
The point is we have here two different things when you're talking about this. The first thing, it's about processes, and you can do things to empower that staff and to make them be more useful for the guest and have more capabilities to definitely help. And the second one, it's about people. And about people, it's about training, it's about being empathic, it's about being approachable, and that is the challenge. The challenge is to create some rules and create some standards, but on the other hand, being flexible to adapt to the circumstances of each case and make a consistency between all the channels. So if you are in the airport, or if you call the contact center, or if you have being served by a cabin crew, have the same style of service, like an Etihad style of service.
I've spoken to your friend and colleague and CEO, Eduardo Matos, about this, and he said one of the challenges that an airline has is you've got to have the same level of service. And the phrase he used was, it could be a student paying 2,000 dirhams for a return ticket to Rome, or it could be a billionaire traveling in your residence, your absolute premium level of service. And you need different levels of service. How do you approach that?
You have, if you think about an aircraft, today you can have someone in the residence, someone in first class, someone in business class, someone in what you call economy space, which is like a premium economy, and in economy. So we have 5 ways of flying in the same aircraft that probably will fit different kinds of people. So the first thing is we have a common kind of Etihad hospitality, which is common to all of them. It's about a smile, it's about being proactive, it's about following the guest when it needs. That is the common part. Then you have different levels of service depending on the cabin that you are flying with. Where that could be different food, that could be different kind of amenities, but and the different procedures from the crew. But the Etihad style and the smile and the being empathic and always there should be common to the entire aircraft.
Which is more difficult, would you say? Obviously, the people in the residence and first class, you have greater capacity to offer them great customer service because there's more people available. Obviously, they're paying more, but the level of expectation is higher. In economy class, of course, the ratio of staff to passenger is much lower. That brings a challenge, but also the expectations are lower. Which is the more challenging?
All of them are challenging because of that, because you always have to see that the reputation or the satisfaction, it's the difference between expectations and reality. And considering that, if you are going to the residence, it's true, you have a really high expectation. But I think because of Etihad brand and all the story that you mentioned in the beginning and all the things that we carry for the last 20 years, the expectations when we're traveling Etihad are always high. And that's one of the things that we need to be careful when we define our standards, when we define our procedures, when we do our training, is to considering that the starting point, it's an airline which has a really strong brand in terms of quality and customer service. And it's challenging. I agree with you.
And it's got to be economically viable as well, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I was looking at the stats from IATA, the industry body, today. The average profitability per passenger last year, which was a good year for the airlines, was $6.14. That's about the price of a cup of coffee. So you can't just throw money at the problem, can you?
No, you can't. This is a business with volume, of course. So it's a business where you need a lot of passengers, and you need to keep higher load factors for the profitability to appear. But on the other hand, it's something that it's a business where you can get some efficiencies that sometimes people think that to be more efficient you have to cut customer service. It's not true. You can be efficient doing different. And this is the permanent challenge for the airlines, especially since the low costs came in Europe, in US, where you have people change their mind about how much they are able to pay for a ticket. So because of that, airlines have to adapt everything the way that you were doing. But the challenge is to do it without reducing customer service or without reducing the service that you are providing. It's about being more efficient. It's about doing different. It's about changing the paradigms that you have in the industry, but not cutting service, because otherwise, with the numbers that you are seeing, it's really easy to do no service. And that doesn't make sense.
And of course, you're living in a region in the Gulf. Some of the best airlines in the world in terms of customer service are on your doorstep. That perhaps wouldn't necessarily be the truth. I'm European. I can say it. Maybe that's not always true in Europe where you're from, but it is here in the Gulf. And again, that creates a level of expectation among your customers, I would imagine.
Always. If you know that you are flying in an airline from this region, that always uplifts your expectations. If you are traveling from airlines of other regions in the world, your expectations are much lower. It's true. But on the other hand, I think that the market is changing a little bit. The market, it's considering at the same time that you are having these numbers from IATA, you are having as well much more habits of flying. 2023 will beat 2024, will beat all the numbers for 2019. So before COVID, it means that you have more people flying, you have people flying more often. And with that, this is becoming much more a commodity and something that we don't prepare to fly like our grandparents were doing. So all the paradigm around this industry has changed. It's true that we have some minimums and we have something that we have to deliver. And you have to consider that a flight Abu Dhabi, New York is 14 hours, for example. So you need to be careful and to make sure that you assure a great customer service for someone that will spend 14 hours with you. But on the other hand, it's not the same experience that it was a few years back. And people just adjust what they want from a flight and what they expect from a trip to this new reality.
It's interesting how you balance those issues. The fact that almost good customer service has to be automated. What was the quote that you gave me at the beginning? Customer service is good customer service.
No, good service is no service.
Good customer service is no service. And I get that. It's just seamless. So we don't need to ask.
You don't need, but my point is, if you don't need, great. If you need, we are here.
But also,
and the human being is here. It's not a machine.
You talk about creating delight moments, looking at the customer service gurus. People like Ron Kaufman talk about going from customer satisfaction to customer delight. Is that still relevant to an organization that carries millions of passengers a year? Can you really create those delight moments when you have so many customers? Should you really aim to create those delight moments?
I think so. I think there is small things that you can do. You can have delight moments in two different things. One of the things, it's those that you can do. For example, we did free Wi-Fi for Etihad guest members to use WhatsApp. It's a delight moment. You know that all the time that you are flying Etihad, since you are an Etihad guest member, you will have free Wi-Fi to chat with your friends during the flight. This is the small things that, when I say delight moment, is something that you can keep in our minds. The second thing, it's about when something wrong happens. The way that you solve it and the way that you can recover from them could be a delight moment as well. So because we know that problems will happen, problems always happen in airlines, and I came from telco. In telco, we had problems as well with the guests, and the difference is made in the way that you solve that problem and you reboot the relationship with the guest, and that could be a delight gesture as well.
Let's talk about technology. Using technology in particular for personalization, and I guess this is particularly relevant for your customers in the non-flight part of it, in the booking and the pre-booking and the managing their booking. But in your own words, how is technology impacting customer service? You're the head of customer care. And what are some of the challenges therein?
Technology is an enabler to create the possibility for the guest, for him to do exactly what he wants by himself. So it's the way that you can empower the guest. And on the other hand, from our side, it's the way that we can make contact center agents, for example, life easier, because we can have a lot of information about what's happening and we can solve the situations, or even we can be proactive and contact someone to say your flight is delayed, you just have to come to the airport 15 minutes after. So this and technology is really important for that, because you need to connect all the channels, connect all the moments in the customer journey, and to see what to do in each moment with the information that you have with you. And coming to personalization altogether, imagine it's premium customers I can call. If it's another kind of customer, I can send a WhatsApp message, for example. For some guests, I can have someone in the airport waiting for them. For some guests, I can just send a message with some procedures. So it allows me to do a lot of personalization, even in the treatment of some situations.
Let's talk about AI, artificial intelligence, in particular in terms of customer service and AI bots, I'm going to call them, in terms of customer service. What's your view on the role of artificial intelligence bots in customer service? And I'm thinking of going on a website and you get the little box, hello, my name is Ahmed, how can I help you today? And it's an AI generated conversation. Yep. What are your thoughts about that in general, and then specifically related to Etihad?
I think it's something that is helping us a lot. In the meantime, we are developing. We are not in a stage where you can say that today is doing a big difference, but we'll get there.
You think we'll get there?
I think so.
Will?
I think so.
What convinces you that we will get there?
Because when you start to think that you have a lot of points in the relationship with the customer, which are things that are purely information, there is no reason to not to get there. When you think about this is my PNR, what's my baggage allowance? This is really easy to do. These kind of things are really easy to do, and then can clean a lot of situations. And you don't have to call, you don't have to go to an IVR, you don't have to wait, whatever. Even for the guest, that's the perfect example. What you prefer? You prefer to call and to speak with someone to know that you can carry 32 kgs, or you prefer to start a WhatsApp bot like we have now in tests, and WhatsApp bot that you ask, the WhatsApp bot will ask you what's your PNR, what's your last name. Is this the flight that you want to ask? It's 32 kgs. You can take this in your bag, whatever. This information is enough. Yes, thank you. Done. Everything in WhatsApp message. So this is important because this will empower the guest to choose the channel he wants to do the things. The other thing is this should replace our contact center with an agent. And my opinion is no. The agent should be there. And if you prefer, if you're not comfortable, whatever, you should have the agent available to take care of your situation. But my view, it's much more about incentivizing people to use these kind of channels because they work and because they are easier to deal with than to force people to use it. I'm not a fan of enforcing people to use channels by hiding the phone number or closing the lines or something like that.
I'm so glad to hear that.
This should be a natural adoption because it's better for you.
How do you approach language? English, Arabic, of course, goes without saying, but beyond that?
We are using 14 languages, but it's a challenge. Languages is in these kind of contact centers is one of the biggest challenges because if you see Etihad world, 90% it's English and Arabic combined. So you just have 10% spread by several languages, which makes really small pieces in each one. But on the other hand, we know that in some markets, people don't speak English in a way that they can do. So what we are doing now, it's in the contact center. We are having in those markets, we are making available the local languages. And we are starting to look at AI and these kind of tools to do it in chatbots and even for emails and other kind of written communication to try to use to make online translation to support other languages that we are not supporting today.
What's your level of confidence that within the next however many years, that someone working at an Etihad call center who's fluent in Arabic and English, but is having a conversation with someone in, let's say, Thailand, and that the AI will be able to simultaneously translate? Because Google's telling us it's possible now with their phones, and Apple talks a good game, and so on, and so do the technology companies. But you're at the sharp end of customer service. What's your level of confidence that it will be of a high enough level for a company like an Etihad or your peers?
For now, I don't have that confidence yet. But it's something that I think in a few years it will be possible.
It will be.
There are some companies that are doing something which is a mix, which is the AI does the first translation, then it has like a network of human translators. They validate the translation and they send. This is not possible to do in a chat, for example, but it's possible to do, for example, for complaints. So we have time. You receive is writing in Russian, for example. We receive it in English. We write back in English. The system will put in Russian. This goes to someone in Russia that I have in a network. That people will validate and do small adjustments and will send to the guest. This already exists. So the point is to remove these last parts about the human validation. And I think we are not so far from that. In a couple of years, will be possible.
Let's talk about what all this means for small businesses. And as I mentioned at the beginning, you also own a couple of small businesses in your native Portugal. So you've been at the sharp end of this as well. You work for a multi-billion-dollar organization like Etihad. Most small businesses don't have a director of customer care, do they? It's the owner, or it's the general manager, or whoever it may be, or the head of sales who does that. How do you relate all of this to small businesses? What's your advice?
The first big difficult, and I expect I live that, it's when the small business is growing and you are not able to talk to the owner every single situation that you have with the company. That's the biggest point. So when you need to empower other people to make customer service, make relation, make whatever on your behalf. And that's the first step where we have to invest a lot and to create some confidence in your customers that you have an organization ready to support him.
Well, if you've cracked that one, tell me now, because I own an SME as well, and it is a challenge. So
it's a challenge.
What have you learned that worked? What are some of the
What I learned is we need to go with the people, shadowing for many months, working together, starting to pull out from some meetings, to make the other person that is taking the control to be the face of the company for that customer. And the customer will start to trust. And with that, it's possible to do. This is the first phase when you are just passing from the owner to partners or to other kind of people in the first level, but the company is growing a little bit. Then you have the second phase when you have to, everyone in the organization or a lot of people in the organization can be able to support you. And then you have once again, processes and people. It's always about that. It's about starting to create ways of having things in the register. So like having at least a small CRM, people that know that someone talked with this person, what happened, what they propose, and then you start building from there. I think that one of the things that the small business, sometimes they don't evaluate enough is a CRM tool. Now there is really small in terms of effort. CRM tools that you can buy 100% online with companies that can guide you to the setup process. It's not a project for $1 million like it was in the past. So it's a monthly fee.
You've mentioned this phrase a couple of times. Processes and people, those two things together, equally valid for a multi-billion-dollar operation like Etihad or Eduardo's small business.
One of the things that I think the small businesses don't evaluate enough is to having well-defined processes and to have, of course, in a big organization, you don't have the same freedom to overpass the process. In a small business, it's easier to say, no, in this case, I will do different. But at least you have some guidance. You know what to do. And you know that someone else in your place in 2 months, because you are on leave or because you are doing something different that you are not available, they know what to do. And they have the information about what the previous person did. And that's why the CRM tool is so important. The CRM tool is important to manage pipeline for sales, for example. It's important to manage contacts that you had in the past about what happened with you. It could be important to do some prediction as well. So for me, once you start to having, and this is not just for B2C, B2B is important as well, to have structured information. One of the issues that I saw in small businesses, we are discussing in some meeting about the business with the company X. And we have to appeal to people's memory to understand how many business they did last year, what happened in that project that not went so well, and probably they are upset. The problems are exactly the same as in a big business. The point is to structure a little bit more the processes with, of course, with the different kind of standardization. It's more about guidance than process, and about training people that we know that in this in small business training is it's much more difficult than in a big business that we industrialize and we train all across the board. But these two things together, I think we can appeal it for both of them. And in process, I'm including IT and the investment in IT.
Let's talk about leadership. I'm thinking again about the customer service guru, Ron Kaufman. And one of the things he said is that leaders have to lead by example. when it comes to customer service, not just the way they treat customers, but the way they treat their staff. And I'm guessing that's as true in a multi-billion-dollar organization as it is in an SME. You've got to embody and lead by example.
For sure. And but when the companies are growing and you have that process that we discussed before about passing by the owner of the company managing the customers to the directors or partners or wherever you have it, and then spread it by the organization, you see that people are growing, seeing the owner of the company taking care of the customers, and that makes a huge difference. And taking care of the results of the surveys, for example, and trying to analyze the reasons about that is happening, and that makes a huge difference. One of the things that I had in the contact center was in Portugal. I had a customer that wrote me an email saying that I love the service because it looks like I was handled by the son of the owner of the company. And this is the biggest compliment you can get. So he realized that that person was so engaged with the situation and with the problem, and so empathic and trying to find a solution, that it looks like it was the owner of the company. And we should act, all of us, as owners, of course, with boundaries and within the limits that we can have with the processes. But we should act as owners, doing anything to solve the issue, like if we are doing with our own business.
Let's talk about difficult customers. Many types of difficult customer. Almost the easiest one is the customer with a legitimate gripe. Something's got wrong. We'll look at that one quickly. How do you deal with customers with a legitimate gripe when something's got wrong?
There is one thing that I listened a few years back, which is the customer is not always right, but he always has his own emotions. So the first thing it's about dealing with emotions. And you have to explain, you have to try to make things happen, and you have during the margin that you have to manage that, you have to go as further as you can go. But you always have to keep in mind that it's an emotion moment. A flight that was cancelled, and you never can see, and this is really difficult for the people to understand in the contact centers and in the frontliners, which is, I came from telco, then airlines. So for me, a customer without service in telco, it's one more customer. But for him, it's the football game tonight that you will not watch. For me, a flight that was cancelled, it's a flight, it happens. It's part of the daily operation of an airline. But for those guests that were in that flight, could be missing our best friend wedding tomorrow. So this is the first thing that they need to understand. They are in a position where they have in their hands some difficult issues for people's life. So they have to manage the best way they can, and they have to be empathic and try to find solutions. And I think this is the main point they have to understand. On top of this, and because of this, they need to understand, since these are critical moments, people can be emotional in that moment, so they can not be in the right mood or in the mood that is more easy for us to deal with. And we have to do both things. We have to solve the issue, and we have to deal with that mood and try to pass that. It's not easy, but it's possible.
Okay, so Eduardo, there's the customer who has a legitimate gripe. A flight's been cancelled. It's rare, but it happens. What about the difficult customer who's just being reasonable? The customer in 32F who is constantly complaining about the food, wants a cup of tea, wants an extra blanket, has got an issue with the screen or things they have in front of them on the in-flight system. The customer who is being unreasonable. How do you deal with that? Either as a small business owner or as a multi-billion-dollar company?
That's the most difficult profile. The point is when everything that you can do it's not solving, and sometimes it's increasing even it's increasing the level of conflict, because that kind of guest, sometimes you understand that it can go further because you are just answering back. But in that situation, you just have to go to as far as you can go, if it's reasonable and it's something that is according to your company policy and even with the brand. And once you get to that point, you just need to say that this is my final answer. Sometimes we need to say, this is my final answer. This is everything that I can do for you, and close the case.
Because you've got to be prepared to lose customers.
You have to. Sometimes you have to. But as you were saying, if you look at that in a cold way and in the purely management way, those $6 versus someone that is, for example, calling you every single day during 1 year, you can see the business case. So that's why, and I don't see things like that. But even if you try to see things like that, you don't have a business case in some customers.
Going to wrap up now. A couple of final questions. Firstly, what's the best piece of advice that you've been given in terms of customer service if you think back through your career?
I think it's everything which is related with try to understand the situation in the customer point of view and not in our point of view. And this is really important for training, especially for the could be the flight attendants, could be the contact center agents, doesn't matter. Because you are in a position where you see mostly the problems. No one is calling you to say, I had a great flight today. Thank you very much. People call you if they have an issue, if they have a doubt. So when you put yourself in a contact center agent mind, you will think, maybe you will think, in this company nothing works because I receive a lot of calls every single day. But you receive calls from those that are calling. 90% of them, 80% of them, they never call. So you have to always make in your people's mind, and that's why people is so important in culture, in training, that they are handling a small batch of situations where we are having problems. The mainstream, they don't have any issues, and you never speak with them. Because otherwise people can be biased and can think that we have a lot of problems and they can be a little bit demotivated. But we need to make clear that this is a small part of people that have issues. We are here to help them. Please help them, and think that in every single case that is calling you is calling back because they have something. And something could be a wedding tomorrow, could be a football match tonight, could be in the family, someone that passed away and has to travel tonight. So we need to be really careful with every single situation, because it's not one more situation. It's a moment of, especially traveling, it's a moment of truth in people's life, to go for some special event or something that happened or an important meeting. And they have to have that really clear in their minds every single moment, to be empathic, to do everything that they can within the procedures, of course. And when you go to the small business, it's exactly the same. It's about having always that guest really engage with the organization, with the difficulty of sometimes not having the same thing from the owner that they were used to have in the past, but have the same level of engagement, have the same level of service delivery, delight if possible, but always having the guests with us.
Finally, the one piece of advice you'd give to a small to medium-sized business owner or manager. I'm just picturing you sitting on an Etihad flight and you're sitting next to a small business owner and you strike up a conversation and say, what's the one piece of advice you could give me? I'm not sure if you'd be in seat 1A and 1B or 67C and 67D, but you're sitting together.
Okay.
What would be that one piece of advice to the small business owner?
In small business, I would say technology. I think it's a piece that sometimes in customer experience we don't invest so much. And when I say technology, could be a CRM tool or could be an Excel database where we have the logic around a CRM tool. But the point is, know the customer, know the interactions, know the potential, and try to avoid to keep things in people's minds. In small business, we have a lot of temptation on, you are managing this customer for 10 years. What happened in 2020 with this guest during COVID and things like that? But one day that person will not be there. This will not be available. The customer involvement with you will grow, and everything which is related with just the knowledge of one person, it's something that I think we should avoid. And that's good for technology, that's good for processes. We need to start to build the business to grow independent on the person.
Eduardo, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
The thoughts there of Eduardo Matos, Director of Customer Care at Etihad Airways. Well, that is it for this episode of the SMEsouk Podcast, brought to you by RAKBANK Business. Do join us for the next one.